Welcome to Eminence TV Live, our weekly rundown of tournament CEDH and what's going on in the CEDH community. I'm Scoots, and I'm joined by Jamaican Dude from Playing with Power. I have to say that. And our fearless director, Mike, on the ones and twos. Well, I'm also joined by ComedIanMTG, the wonderful, the benevolent, the kind. You can see him in the top left. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Moxfield and the Epic Storm, without whom this wouldn't be so amazing, wonderful. Pick your adjectives. This week, we're going to go over some of the happenings in the CEDH meta, in the CEDH community, and tell you about some tournaments that are going to happening. We're going to discuss Punt City a little bit more, and we are going to talk to ComedIanMTG about tournament prep, and I'm super excited for that. I would say we're joined later by a special guest, but in fact, he is right here already. So, let's get down to it. To start us out, I need to tell you, number one, that we are Eminence MTG, I would say, probably the best tournament organizer of CEDH, and we are going to totally shake everything up and totally own the meta, as it were, as far as that goes. And we're happy to bring you this live news show. And yes, I will toot my own horn just for a little while. I'm sorry. Punt City is our premier first inaugural tournament coming up August 27th and 28th in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania at the Hilton Garden Inn, Valley Forge Oaks is the full name of the place. Nice. To give you a perspective of what's going on, we are sold out of event tickets for the main entry, and hotel rooms are going very fast. I do not think there is many left. I think we are over 75% sold. There is no rooms at the Hilton still, so come join the squad at the Hampton Inn right across the street where I am staying. Also, importantly, get ready for LobbyCon. The best part. There's a bar. Okay. Sean, what were you saying, bud?
There's also a wait list for whoever wishes to still get in line for anyone who can't make it. So join the wait list and see if you're one of the lucky few that still get to come to this awesome event.
And as always, join our Discord server. The link is in our Twitch bio down there. We'd love to see you there. We'd love to hang out and chat. And I know Mike is in there all the time. He is the absolute father of that Discord, and he will treat you like his own child. It is wonderful. Let's see. We have some news for this week. I think that pretty much tackles announcements. We'll hit you with some more at the end. But news for this week. We have a couple of goings on that I'm going to talk about in brief in a moment. First, though, Chaos 3, the third tournament from Chaos at the Nexus events, is on July 30th. It's an online tournament, and you can find info on that at the CEDH Nexus or at the Chaos at the Nexus Discord server. I believe it's a 128-person cap online server. The prize pool is pretty good, so I would suggest if you have a free Saturday and you would like to play some CEDH against some wonderful people, that you should join it.
Also,
go ahead.
I was gonna say one of the few premier online tournaments just still staying in an online.
Still
space,
going,
so.
Yeah.
Also, if you want to prep for Punt City, it's also a good place to go prep.
I assume a lot of people who will be at Punt City will be there. So
get those reps in.
Absolutely.
Everyone has the same idea. If you want to prep for Punt City, and you should, and we'll talk about why in a little bit, you should play at Chaos 3. Secondly, if you're in Europe and you're coming to Punt City, here's how you prep. You go to Tier 1 MTG in Copenhagen, Denmark, August 5th through 7th. I think a lot of content creators are going to be there. The prize pool is once again big. It's, I believe it is on schedule to be another 128-person event, which is very large. I'm very excited for that. And last but not least, November 18th, 19th, and 20th, we have Oktoberfest 22, unceremoniously ousted from their October date by Magic 30 in Las Vegas. The fine folks over at Monarch fixed it, got a different date. It is in Philadelphia, downtown Philadelphia, November 18th, 19th, and 20th. And if after Punt City you have not sated your CEDH bloodlust, you should go back to Philadelphia and play in Oktoberfest.
Absolutely.
I will say that there are many, many more things that are coming up on the schedule, but that's the news for this moment. This week, we have some exciting topics to discuss, including the 60 Card Grinders definitive tier list. The Rules Committee has released some cultivated content, and there's CEDH content on it. We're going to discuss ComedIanMTG's recent tourney prep video on YouTube in depth. We're going to go over just real quick. Timmy T1000 CEDH Budget Brews, pillar of the community, has started a new How to Build Your First CEDH Deck series, and I want to talk about that for a little bit. We're going to talk about Joking 101's tourney write-up from the last Playmax 3 tournament. We're going to talk about Play to Win's Krark off. I'm very excited for that. Play to Win, by the way, coming, I think, to many events in the near future. We're going to talk about the latest Miscast episode, and I am going to highlight one of my favorite new content creators, one of Mikey, our head TO's favorite content creators. Kahlua has released their first edited gameplay video after several wonderful interview shows, and it is a banger. So, let's start off the news where it starts. We have the 60 Card Grinders definitive CEDH tier list. I have to assume that this was made with tongue very, very far in cheek when it was done. Have you both seen it?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I saw Ian's reaction. He was not a fan.
I can't believe we're actually talking about this today.
Yes,
we're not going to talk about it in depth. We're just going to talk about one or two things from it. Number one, I just wanted to highlight this. We have Winota as one of the very few good decks in the format. And number two, Tim Nethrasios is one of the good decks in the format. And so I feel like it's valid for that reason if Tim Nethrasios is at the top. Yeah.
I think it's also viable because Get Wrong was considered a player skill deck.
Yeah, I think that is true. So importantly, there's a few accurate assessments on here, and there are a few that I have verbally disagreed with in other places and to the list's creator. But I have been almost surprised by the CEDH community's response, and even the rest of the EDH community's response to this tier list. There has been almost like, I feel like people are taking it seriously, and I'm not sure it's supposed to be.
Well, I think that it's already been a thing, like a tension point for a good amount of time. As like, if you follow Drake on Twitter, right? Like, there's been some people who've had a lot of problem with him and his presence in the format. And so the person who tweeted this out was like, "Oh, there's a bit of an issue here. Sorry, let me just pour all this gasoline on the fire." What's that?
we were definitely stirring a pot there. Excuse me while I scratch the tip of my nose. We were definitely pouring some gasoline on the fire there. I've heard about this tier list from people who don't even play CEDH.
I believe it was, for me, I believe it was a great thing for the light community. Just for like, it was a great thing. Everyone band together and like, oh, how dare you disrespect my deck? And it brought together a unionship. And I accept that unionship versus
in unified hate. We're all one. I love it. Yeah. Okay. So that's all. I just wanted to touch on it. Those of you in chat, I'd love to actually to know your take on it. The other thing I'm going to do right now is I have assembled all of the links that we are going to talk about in a wonderful document so that if you would like to play along at home, you can go to this link that I'm about to post in the Twitch chat and have all the links for yourself. Now, secondly, importantly, the Rules Committee has released their cultivated content feature, which has been a while in coming. We actually... So the last one was June 30th, but before that, the last one was May 3rd. So they're fairly infrequent. The one before that was even the 10th of January. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the things contained therein, and most importantly, two things. There is, number one, the Phyrexians for Uvalde charity stream this past weekend, and indeed the rest of this week. Raising money for families of affected individuals in Uvalde, Texas, for the shooting that happened down there. The organizers have been really nice. They had me on this last weekend, and Anxiety Elemental and Skylar Moloch for a CEDH game for Phyrexians After Dark. And the campaign continues this entire week. So you can go to twitch.tv/will of the completions, completion spelled like, the Phyrexian way. And I think they're still streaming this week. Number two, interestingly, the Hermit Druid was on MTG in Quarantine. If you've never heard MJ's podcast, MTG in Quarantine, he's a very nice man. He has had people from all perspectives on there, CEDH, EDH, and I think people to talk about not Magic too. He's a very nice person. The podcast is worth checking out. And I would advise you to do so. And the Hermit Druid, Nathan, is always nice to hear. Is a man who could talk about literally anything for hours. And interestingly, the RC has highlighted Ken Bauman's appearance on Play to Win, wherein they had a contest to determine who the best Krark partner in CEDH was, which was interesting. We saw a few different decks. We saw Krark Silas, we saw Krark Timna, we saw, obviously, that other one. And I believe the last deck we saw was Krark Thrasios. It was kind of wild. Lots of coin flips. So if coin flips are your thing, I would totally suggest checking it out. Importantly, Dylan played Krark Timna, finished the game with 96 life on a Professor Onyx Chain of Smog win. Which is cool. I think that's cool. I like Krark Timna. I think it's an interesting deck. I will ask my co-hosts and special guest, how have you felt about the viability of Krark decks in the CEDH meta to this point?
I'll let you go first, Shiny.
I believe my take for Krark is pretty known by now. The deck puts me to sleep. But actually puts me to sleep. But other than that, it's a viable deck. It started out as a meme, and I think the memes became dreams. And after that, it was just you can, but people haven't figured out how to deal with the deck on the axis it plays on. And I think that's one of the reasons it has good tournament results and just a good deck overall. I haven't seen the other variants other than the Play to Win video. The Krark Sekishima, not the Krark Sekishima, the Krark Silence seems like you're just trying to die quicker with consult lines.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a great idea, but the Krark Timna, that seems pretty cute. But other than that, Krark as a mechanic is pretty interesting. And it definitely can be an old stack piece, which I believe is hilarious. But at the same time, it enables some really wonky stuff.
Cool. Ian, what about you? How do you feel about Krark?
So I mean, Krark Saka is like pretty definitively the best version to be playing. I mean, that's kind of like the I think Krark Thras is like pretty hard second. Which is a shame because I think Krark Thrasios as a deck would make me very happy in general. Like I really like Krark Thrasios as a deck.
Yeah.
And
same.
the sort of stain of Krark Sakashima has sort of bled over into that deck that I find really interesting, and like it's kind of a shame in that sense. But
Yeah.
so the Krark Sakashima thing, obviously it's been a hot button topic for quite some time, especially coming out of the last Monarch event. It did not present itself well in the past few tournaments. That's more of a social angle. The fact that people have attempted to defend the deck, and even in their defense of the deck, there have been like games rules violations in the like how to show how to play this deck videos, right? Is really a demonstration of the fact that the deck is a tough deck to play in a tournament setting. I still think it's very powerful. Obviously, it's a frustrating deck that exists, especially if you're like a mid-range player. It kind of stinks because you have to overcommit to stop that deck and commit to play patterns that are, in a grander sense, incorrect to stop it. And it's tough. So, there's ways around it. People are playing more spot removal. It kind of has that problem that like a lot of casual decks had for a really long time, that like decks with commanders with reputations, where as soon as people realized what the commanders did, they just got removed all the time. And even to a point where, because of the potential of the list, it actually gets removed now maybe too much. And in places where it may be incorrect to do so, but because it has that upward potential, it's very scary, right? It kind of like, people I think look at like a Krark Sakashima resolving kind of the way they look at Cody untapping, right? And I don't, they're definitely different archetypes. I'm not saying trying to compare the two, but they have that kill on sight mentality from a lot of people because they have this reputation now. I just, for some reason, a lot of people were trying to defend it as people's first deck in the format, and like a non-deterministic storm deck that based on extreme variance should just, it's a fun idea, but please don't ever teach someone how to play this format on that deck. That sounds like a horrible idea. So it has a lot of branding problems basically in the format. It is a giant pain from a TO angle. It is a giant pain from a judge angle, and it is a giant pain from a player angle, which stinks because it should be this fun thing. And it's a huge branding problem, right, for this deck. And it's kind of unfortunate, just the whole situation, because no one's happy with it. That's
been my feeling about the deck as well. It's one of those things where the way that I've described it is that Krark is a self-stacked piece until it isn't. So as a mid-range player, having to overcommit like my Swords to Plowshares to Krark, like it's frustrating because it's not a target that would necessarily merit that response in all cases. So it is frustrating to have to overcommit my board to stop Krark. And then the other thing is that I think Krark definitely has an image problem, like you said, and I think it was kind of pitched to people entering the format as a way to play CEDH that didn't have Oracle Consult in it, and coin flips and chaos are fun for a lot of casual EDH players, for a lot of EDH players, period. And so it was marketed as this thing where you could enjoy your coin flips and chaos, and there would be no issues, except, as it turns out, Manual Storm, where you're copying spells and flipping 8 coins a turn, is pretty hard to keep track of. And I think it has almost that. I will not mention the forbidden card that was banned because it presented problems in casual EDH because it made turns take a long time. But it does seem to have... You're not supposed to say it, Sean. It's like Snape. You can't say it.
I'm so sorry.
Tangent. And... we just Beetlejuiced it. I think is the Big Richie in the chat said the skill cap on the deck is really high, and no one admits to it. And I think that as well, it rewards player skill, but it also like the skill floor is also fairly high. Manual Storm with non-deterministic results is pretty hard. So I feel like a lot of the problems that people have with it is that everyone has to play a deck for the first time at some point.
Ironically, I think the deck becoming good was the worst thing that could happen to the deck.
Exactly, yes.
There were good cards that made it a really viable tournament deck, and that ruined it forever.
Everyone. Because the thing that people do is if they, I do it too in other formats where you net deck the best deck that you've seen, like you net deck a deck that you've seen win over and over again, and you think you can just, because you have a concept of CEDH, you think that you can deal with it, but people don't play enough practice games before they come to a tournament. Interestingly, in the MLC this year, I believe they had a judge specifically assigned to running the Krarkulator for the Krark Sakashima games. Which is interesting. The Krarkulator presents kind of interesting angle as far as like outside assistance and that kind of thing. In a tournament setting, I for one, I think it's fine, but I again am not a TO or a judge, so I'm a layperson. But I think that maybe allowing more liberal use of things like the Krarkulator or like physical ways of tracking things other than counters, like if people were more precise in the way that they were tracking things, like if you've ever watched a video on the Epic Storm, Bryant Cook has the physical storm counters that are like cards, and I like that angle for Krark Saka as well.
Is it taking the approach like what happened in Miracle's Top, but before it got banned, where it was just unplayable to watch on the stream?
It's the second sunrise problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was just not entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
I think there would be multiple archetypes that we would lose if that was a concern for the RC.
That is true. That is true. Yeah.
I think we would have lost Stasis a real long time ago.
Derevi stacks, let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, that's fair. But that deck wasn't
yes.
But yeah.
I will say
super heavy asterisks on that comment, right? But like, you know what I mean.
Fair. Yeah.
I love Krarkashima. I know some very proficient pilots of Krarkashima that end the game quickly. But the other thing I can say about Krarkashima, it is the only deck that has physically put Ashani to sleep during the middle of a storm turn, like snoring, sleeping.
Yeah. Like,
so,
woke up, checked, storm still going, went back to sleep. Pretty impressive.
And now moving away from Krark, Timmy T1000, pillar of the community, my friend. So maybe I'm slightly biased when I say these things, but very nice man. Has released his first part of an article series on building your first CEDH deck, how to choose the deck that you want to play. He lists a series of questions to ask yourself, like what colors do you tend to enjoy playing the most? What are the general strategies you tend to have the most success with? And what are some of your favorite decks that are not CEDH decks? And do you have deck lists for them to share with those who ask, to give you ideas? And I think these are really good foundational questions for picking the first CEDH deck that you want to play. But I will say that Ian, by the nature of being a fairly popular CEDH YouTube content creator, I'm sure people ask you all the time, what is my entry to CEDH and how do I pick the deck I want to play? Do you have any tips for people who might want to do that?
Yeah, wow. That is a loaded question.
It's a big question. Feel free to answer as much or as little as you would like. I mean,
so like I've literally on multiple podcasts had that just be like the intro topic, because when I was guesting or like being a temporary part of Playing with Power, and when I also was doing the CEDH cast, I've had multiple episodes on subsections of that topic. I mean, the first one is if you can use playtest cards in the space in which you are playing, always do so, because you are not going to learn through budget options as much as you will learn through playtest cards.
That's very good.
That is the 100% the option. As someone who likes to own every copy or a copy of every card that I play with, I still think I'm doing it the bad way. I am doing it the wrong way. And now as someone who's like been playing this format and like invested in many things, the more I do like abstract brews that have like really weird $70 cards that I may never play again except for one deck, like I'm very happy that I haven't spent $200 on a deck that I played once and then never played again.
Yeah.
And that is like, I can imagine if someone invested into the format, like that would feel awful. I mean, my biggest thing for starting to CEDH is like, if you're a brewer, get the base underneath you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get the fast mana.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I didn't have original duels for my first couple of years. I just played chalks. Like, it sucks in certain scenarios. If you're playing IRL, once again, so I was playing in stores where like I'm talking about like IRL events. Yeah. But like, start with shocks. They're not going to kill you. They're fine a good portion of the time. And just like stuff like that, just like make these little micro decisions that like help you build up. But like fast mana is super important. Fast mana is like the CEDH thing. Get your fast mana, get it quick. Play Winota. It's only like $3,000 in comparison to all the other decks, and you can budget it down to like 200. is my real option. But no, there are decks that are not like, I mean, like memes aside of just playing Winota, like there are decks like Winota that you can cut significant optimizations off of that are pieces that they're definitely right to play, but you don't need to play them to be playing at a CEDH level if you are restricted by budget. If you're not restricted by budget or a playtest environment, just play a solid deck that has a very clear strategy, and do one that you don't need to counter too many spells in, and just kind of learn from the environment around you, and then play with people who don't suck. And I don't mean that in like a negative way, but I mean that like the more you play with people who are going to whoop your butt, the better it's going to be, right? Yeah, like
that's true. Always be the dumbest person in the room.
I mean,
the way
I went to the
LGS
with paper, right? So that was like
that's a pretty good case
many times before I learned to fly.
Yeah, it's a pretty good starting case for sure. Yeah, no, Shaper is very much a wizard. I watched the man win so many games in a row at the first DDM event back in the day.
I was the baby bird pushed hella quick out that nest.
All right. I love to hear that. And if you want to see more about that, again, the links to it are in the link that I've pasted in the chat. Wanted to touch briefly on Joking 101 on the competitive EDH subreddit. Posted their Playmax 3 tournament report. They were in the top 4 in Playmax 3. They did not win, accepted one, and we had him on last week. You've heard his report. And if you'd like to know some more about Playmax 3, please go to the competitive EDH subreddit or the link listing that I have posted, and you can go see it. Another thing that we had this week was a Miscast podcast on role assessment in CEDH, basically understanding how you need to play differently at different points and make correct decisions at different times. Did either of you have the opportunity to listen to that?
Yep.
Ashani, did you listen?
Yeah, I haven't finished it yet, but I did start it.
How did you feel about the part that you listened to?
I agree with a lot of what they were saying. I definitely with knowing your role, but that's also for me, a lot of those things are play preference too. It's just always being greedy. But no, for definitely tournament play, you should definitely know your position at the scene. Mm-hmm. But I think when you figure that out in CEDH, your game will go to another level. Just figuring out what you're supposed to do, even if you are so-called the mid-range stack, like knowing that you need a ball to a turn 1, turn 2 slow the game down piece. Mm-hmm. That is what your hand's supposed to do. Like if you're trying to say, oh, I can get this turn 2 Timna, and I can try to go for it in a 2x NOS pod, turbo NOS pod, it's just not going to work. You will lose that game 80% of the time.
Absolutely.
Like I've been learning that a lot recently. When I've been playing Richie's Tim Natana Hulk list, and I just have to admit that I have to play the stacks game, and I have to mount to Definite Silence Collective. If I don't do that, I will never have a chance to be a competitor in the game. And I think what they were on those levels, what they were stating is very true. And we should all definitely listen to that podcast and take good information if you're trying to become a better Magic player.
Yeah, I also clicked through on the show notes to the original article that they based their discussion off of. And I will paste the link to that in the chat right now.
That's considered like one of the greatest pieces of Magic literature of all time. The original article is like famous through 60 card Magic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the art of war of 60 card MTG.
Kinda.
Like yeah. It's very good. You should go and first listen to the Miscast episode and then read that article. Ian, you listened to the episode. Did you take away anything new from it that you weren't doing already?
No, but I don't think I am the majority of people, right? So like I think that is a very I actually tweeted about this because I've been listening to every episode. I've known Mikey for a considerable amount of time, so obviously I was going to support this project. I've always thought Mikey's a very intelligent player. So I was going to So I was going to support this project, and then I've been listening to it a lot, and I've been enjoying it. And one of the sort of jokey things I had put in that tweet was, "This is the episode I've disagreed with the least, for sure." But it's actually been it's a fascinating listen to, like, if you go through now and sort of binge these episodes, listen to the perspective of Drake even changing and learning as he has become more familiar with the format.
I've loved it. It's really been great.
It's fascinating because I mean, so a lot of the times I like to say when I've been, and so first of all, I always start by pitching this show to people. I can vehemently disagree with things people say and also think that it's really intelligent stuff. So like, and I don't vehemently disagree with a lot of this stuff. So I think like a lot of the conclusions sometimes presented in the show, I don't 100% jive with.
Sure.
However, the thinking between Mikey, a seasoned player who's always, to me, ahead of the curve, and Drake, who is a renowned 60 card player who just knows the game of Magic extremely well, hearing their thought processes, whether you want to agree with them at the end of the day or not, is going to make you a better player. They are both very intelligent people. They're both intelligent players, and they both know this game really, really well. So just exposing yourself to that, like I listen to a lot of things that from other people from perspectives of like people who make decks purely from the entertainment standpoint, and I will pick up things from them, and I will listen to people like them who Mikey and Drake, who are extremely technical and know the game really well, and I'll pick up things from them. And that's if you want to round yourself out as a player, it's a fantastic way to do it. It's just getting all these perspectives. And they're extremely smart people, and I love listening to the podcast for sure.
I've really loved to hear Drake talk about Magic. It's like he's an extremely good player, and playing against Drake has been a pleasure every time I've played against Drake. And I have, however, loved to see the perspective shift, whether it's on land counts, whether it's on threat assessment or cantrips in a 4-person game, and going up or down cards. Like there's always something good to hear, and he's so smart that when his thought process he discovers is incorrect, what he says about his thought process to that point and why he got there is still worth listening to. Yeah,
that's another part of it, right? Not only the development of his perspective, but the week to week, each of their reflection on notions that they've had before. That's one of the, like, I'm a big self-reflection person, like in my personal life and in Magic specifically. And if I'm not challenging what I did last week, then I'm unhappy with myself as a player or as a person. And the fact that you can actually hear through this podcast them challenging their perspectives they are bringing up from week to week, be like, this is, we've talked about this historically as we've gone through these episodes. Here's my perspective on it now. We're going to continue evolving these ideas as we go along. It's really interesting listening as far as that, and they're really good at reflecting on their own work.
There are sorry, go ahead, Sean.
I agree. I had to there was an episode that I had a very big disagreement with, where I had to try to get my play with powers and had a podcast about it. But no, definitely they have changed a lot of outlook of how I played Magic a lot. And I try to put that into my games, and it has made some games differently, but bad habits die hard, and I'm trying to be better about it. But yeah.
I will say, chat, there are 13 episodes of the Miscast. It will take roughly 20 hours of your life to listen to all of them, so you should probably go start now if you haven't and get all those consumed, especially if you're going to play in Chaos 3 or Punt City. You will want that insight. I am telling you, you will be a better Magic player at the end of those 20 hours. Last but not least, I wanted to talk about Kahlua's first edited gameplay vid. I was a big fan of it. Kahlua has done an interview series. He had me. I think he had Ashani. He had Timmy T1000 and higher. It's been very funny and extremely disarming. The man is doing CEDH content in a way that people really haven't before, in a extremely comedic vein, but a very well put together presentation. So I'm a big fan of that. And this week, I think he took it to the next level with his intro to his edited gameplay series, wherein it was definitely him doing the announcer voice, but he did the Smash Brothers intro screen. And when people to announce the players. And one thing that I really loved that he did was he put my friend and Rogue Brewer Crossfire Cat in the random square on the Smash Brothers intro screen.
That's so accurate.
Because he was playing like Karlak, Agent of the Iron Throne or something.
It's such a Crossfire thing. I saw that when I was like, that is the best way to describe Crossfire.
I love the man. But yeah, random is good. Random was excellent. It's So the link to that is in the group of links that you've seen floating around in the chat a couple times. And now, my friends, it is 7:40 p.m. and it is time to begin the intensive, very personal, in-depth interview with Ian. It's probably not intensive or personal, but we are going to have a little review session. Number one, you released quite recently, and I actually have it open right now in front of me, July 13th, 2022. That's 5 days ago on your YouTube channel. It already has 3,600 views, by the way. It's been 5 days and has 3,600 views. Those are pretty good numbers. One thing I will say before we get into it is I love your audience engagement. You always have so many comments, and people always have stuff to say, and I see you in there hearting comments and replying to people, and I just love to see it. It's very cool.
I like when people, I know a lot of people do like them. Make sure to leave a comment for YouTube engagement, but I also like, I do legitimately like hearing the diverse opinions of people, and like, there's a lot of comments I really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I it's got to be very rewarding as a content creator to see someone say, "Hey, your video helped me," or "Here's why I think differently about your video, and we should talk about it," or any number of things. I always liked the little bell notification, the little serotonin increase from getting a comment on a video back when I was making videos. So, Mikey JH in the chat says Ian is a cuties. That is all. Thank you, Mikey.
I was gonna make a joke about that popping up more in the comments lately, so it's ironic that Mikey.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah. So Mike, our wonderful, lovely producer, has posted the link to your most recent video in the chat for anyone who wants to go watch it after this stream is over. Okay. I have loved the video, and I love how you have gone in depth into different metas as to what you should do to prep for those tournaments. It's such a cool spin on it.
Very informational also. And I didn't think about it that way, and I believe the breakdown is correct. and I hope and that's definitely what has happened in the past. So I definitely respect the content that was produced.
Thank you.
I was like, hey, like if I definitely wanted to like play, like this is something you should definitely look into.
And this is free information, chat, by the way.
Exactly.
Like this is behind the curtain. This is David Blaine telling you how the trick is done. So like go jump in, go watch it. After this is over, to rehash some topics and to maybe introduce some new ones from the video. I know you've talked about it a bunch and are probably sick to death of it, but I have some questions regarding tournament prep for you, if that is okay.
Yeah. Just one thing real quick. It's funny, I sort of talking about this video and mentioning the behind the curtain thing. I've always had this ability to point things out much better than I can perform to myself. It's like the classic teacher syndrome, which is maybe why I'm in childcare.
It could be.
It's and like I do this in my personal life with like rock climbing and stuff like that, where I can puzzle solve the climb much to my friends who are climbing like V10s when I'm still down in 3 or 4s and stuff like that. So the outside perspective of being able to, even if I can't perform in this tournament, I hope that someone in the audience hears this information and genuinely uses it to perform well, and that would make me very happy. That's exactly kind of the ish I'm going for. So
I will say, if you're competing in any of these tournaments coming up and you put up results, go back to that video and post that it helped you.
Yeah.
That would legitimately make me
Ian,
so happy.
yes.
Oh
give
my
that
God.
to Ian. That's what we need. Okay. I love that. That's the energy I want to bring into this. So first of all, you've talked about this at length. We talked about it even for a moment earlier. But preparing for a CEDH tournament, this is a big question. It's a big, wide question. So I'll try to compartmentalize it a little bit. It starts with what deck should you play, which is like, we're going to go a little farther past that. And then I will say a meta buster or the deck you're most comfortable with, or is there another choice? And to compartmentalize that, how do you select a deck for a tourney? You talked about this in the video, but I'd love to hear it from your mouth again for my personal edification.
Yeah, so I think understanding the expectation of a meta is really big. If you can call that shot, you already have an advantage walking into the room. Because the one thing I've noticed with CEDH players is there are actually folks who are much better at calling the shot and much worse at picking the silver bullet after calling the shot. It's actually really funny. I've had a lot of people be like, all right, I know going to tier 1 con, it's going to be full of turbo ad nauseum decks. So I'm going to play a deck that also tries to go fast and loses to rule of law, but is slower than the ad naus deck. And you're like, what are you doing?
Wait a second. Hold on. What? Yeah, absolutely.
Or like I'm gonna play back in the Flash meta. I'm gonna play Razakats into the Flash meta, and you're like, no, you can't. Like all the graveyard hate.
Unfortunately, you're gonna play Flash Hulk and win on turn 1, or you're gonna play Blood Pod. I remember those days. That was rough. I was.
Scott was the guy who kept.
I was the guy playing Razakats into the Flash meta for sure. Those were dark days, but. That's okay. I had a lot of fun. I got to reanimate 8/8s and punch people. It was the best. Not people physically, but like the representation of their metaphysical wizard. So you touched on it a little bit. About assessing the metagame and calling the shot, but not making the right choice. How do people start with assessing the metagame? Like you made some very cogent points in your video. How did you come to those conclusions?
Sure. So tier 1 con is an easy one, right? So let's start with the easy sort of layup. Tier 1 con had 4 online qualifiers before the main event last year. And it was explicitly clear that the Danish meta was just slam and jam turbo decks. And, historically speaking, the Finnish meta were, very intelligent brewers like River May Cry, specifically the progenitor of Blue Farm, came out of, right? That was a meta that was like stereotypically that was the slam and jam meta. And so when all the, I guess, the signs and signals for tier 1 were pointing out to be, oh, here's this other Eastern European country meta that also has these turbo ad nauseum focused players.
Yeah.
Like, I get what's happening here. They like to go fast, and that's okay.
Slamdanavia.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so so how do you identify that, right? You notice the archetype that people are playing the most. If you notice the card ad nauseum, despite the commanders, is frequently played, it's probably a good sign that that's what's happening. And also, look, like, I think one of the clearest indicators is the presence of Thrasios. If you don't see a deck that has Thrasios in it, you know you're in a turbo meta.
It's turbo or hard stacks. There is no mid-range.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
whereas
absolutely.
like, and it's so funny that like my favorite deck happens to be the perfect meta tester deck, because Dawnmaker Thrasios is the like epitome of a mid-range just wreck house deck.
It's so good into everything. It's frustrating that it's good into everything too, because I'm tired of losing to it.
Except the triple turbo meta.
Yeah, except triple turbo is the problem.
And so it's really good, and I can always tell when that meta exists. So I like go to one qualifier in that space, and I'm like, all right, is the Danish meta a triple turbo meta? And Dawnmaker doesn't untap for a turn 2 in like 3 games, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. This was a bad idea. So you might not always have the historical information, but that's okay. A lot of the information does exist out there. It does help to have that historical precedent, which is why I made this video in the first place, because not everyone has been there over COVID playing all of these tournaments, right? But if I can provide that information for people, then it's a lot easier to digest, right? For example, all of the Monarch events have had such a diverse metagame that it ends up rewarding a lot of mid-range decks, because you're able to play against a variety of different things, right? So mid-range decks specifically get picked on by very, very fast decks when they are in larger quantities. The problem with like a turbo meta is that it creates a feedback loop. If you can play a mid-range grindy deck into that meta, but it's always going to be like, well, I'm not as fast as everything else around me. And the more fast decks are being played, the more it's going to create that effect. And
either
it happens quite a lot.
Playing more turbo, losing their desire to play mid-range, or the opposite.
Exactly.
Shawnee, you're I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ian. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I mean, that was mostly the point. Yeah.
Okay. Shawnee, you've ground some tournaments, and you have played some bizarre decks in them before. What helps you make those picks? Like, what specifically are you isolating that sets you up for that pick?
Oh, I think I'm with like Ian with the part of I can know what the meta is, but like on the day of picking the deck, I never pick the deck I'm gonna play, and I'm just notorious for those decisions. Like I'll be testing the deck for 2 weeks. I'm like, I'm gonna play this, and like on the day before, I just completely switch.
Change the deck completely.
Yeah, like okay, I'm gonna rep Get Wrong for a solid while, and I'm like, okay, Get Wrong feels good, and then for some reason I'm like, nope, gonna play Hulk instead. And yeah, that's me. But for me, I believe you play the deck you're most comfortable with. It is incorrect if your deck you're most comfortable with is a slower deck in a faster meta.
Yeah,
like you're definitely gonna get your beats in there. But I think one person does it well. I mean, do not follow LJ's thing of just playing Edric everywhere you go. But it does work for the guy. Like he's
an exception to the rule for sure.
Yeah, he definitely top 16s with the same deck, top 4 a lot. So I think the deck you have the most rep with will help those bad matchups a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. In the chat, I'm supposed to ask you, Ashani, how do you feel about cutting Force of Will before a major tournament like Marchesa?
When I decision is I was playing a lot in a very ingrown meta. our lovely.
I'm familiar. Yes.
Yeah, and I was realizing that Force of Will does nothing for me. Like, it really doesn't. Like the pieces that I'm playing, I want to interact with it. I'm not interacting with the stack, and I think a lot of my deck building ideas come from that aspect. With I'm more aggressive. Like, I don't play interaction in Jund. Like, a lot of people will go by, you play Pyro and Red Blast and those effects. I'm like, I'm not interacting on the stack. If there's an Oracle on the stack, I accept that I have lost. I don't want a card to help me with that. And those are the decisions I make, and it's laughable to a lot of people. But
I respect it.
Hey,
I'm laughing as someone who's played against you enough that this is just funny to me at this point. Where I'm like, the amount of times you've been like, "Fuck, I have nothing."
I got nothing. What do you want from me? Actually, even when he's playing blue, I got another one. What do you want from me? We're not going to lose to Underworld Breach here, you know.
No, exactly. And it could definitely be. It's definitely wrong, but I have seen.
At least you're honest.
No, it's definitely wrong, but I have enough. Maybe it's just for me because someone, I think Connor, is playing my core vault list, and he was like, "Dude, you need Pyro and Red Blast." I'm like, "No, just sequence better. Like,
just win forehead. Okay,
just win. Just sequence better." But that's definitely it.
I mean, so like this is kind of funny because it brings up a whole thing where like there are times where this is a correct way of thinking, right? So for example, I'm working on a version of Roger Silas, where
Roger's in the chat.
Roger's in the chat, where the role assessment of I am Rograk, I am not here to play your game. I am here to win this game as early as possible. And that is for example, the one that I've been playing with most recently, I just at one point was like, oh, I'm going to play more counter spells in this, play it a bit more responsibly, and my win rate just dropped. And I was like, I'm going to go down to as few counter spells as I can feel comfortable as a good person playing. And it skyrocketed. Like I was like, oh, I'm winning so much more now.
I gotta say, Mikey in the chat right now, heed this man's advice, okay? Because you get on me sometimes about only running 6 counter spells in Razakats or whatever.
Oh, well, no. Razakats is a mid-range deck, Scott.
Like 6 or 7 counter spells. But I play tons of removal, and I just want to win. So you just got to listen to Ian, and regardless of context, ignore Ian's complaints here, just regardless of context. Understand? What a win!
I agree. Absolutely agree.
Thank you, Ashani. I feel like I'm yelling into a canyon and hearing my own voice back at me.
I got you. It's just like we just want to remove Darcy's and Dranis. We don't want to interact anywhere else. Like
exactly.
Yeah.
Chat, if you agree, more rockers in the chat, please. Okay. I have some questions outside of picking a deck, which I think is an important thing, but I think if people want to hear that in depth, they should just go watch your video because you explain it better there than we could in this amount of time. I do have some intangibles type questions for you regarding a tournament, like traveling to tournaments. If you're grinding tournaments, if you're moving, if you're going to physical events, the thing that I'd like to know is, when do you usually arrive in the host city? Do you get there a day early? Do you arrive the day of? I guess I'm asking how important a low-stress travel experience is to your personal success in tournaments.
So, that is a great question for someone who isn't me. And
okay.
I'm going to be very transparent about this. I have an insanely low attention capability. And I am also working in education, so I am, as the kids call, a poor. So it is whatever works where I don't have to take off days from work so I can make money to afford to travel to a thing.
Fair enough.
And so for me, it is, I wish I had if I had the luxury to plan out my CEDH ventures where I could, take X amount of days off to get there, prep, maybe even join a team ahead of time.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. And I would love to do that. And I would love to throw expense at that at some point in my life. But that is not, I don't think that's realistically feasible for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And especially, not people who are just like, I got to get there and I'm doing my damn best.
Yeah, I'm going to play in the tournament and try and win.
Right. But at the same time, you do enough of them where you kind of just learn to go with the flow and take the punches. So, for example, I actually don't know if many people know this, but during the last Monarch event, I top 16'd that tournament while actively going through the process of passing a kidney stone. That was just happening during that tournament. Yeah, it was extremely painful. I was actually in excruciating pain between each round. I went and took a bunch of painkillers and was just doing my thing between each tournament. And
Wow.
I think that's just life is going to throw stuff at you. And this is an extreme example, obviously.
Yeah.
And so there's things you can do to help yourself ahead of time, right? Making sure what your body and your mind needs is very important. So if you're someone who needs a lot of rest ahead of time, that's not me. I'm a big old crackhead.
Yeah.
I can just get up and do my thing and be sleep deprived because I've been thinking about my deck all night. And at least that's putting me in the mindset of where I need to be, right? But if you need to be the person who is fully rested, wakes up, has the tranquil morning, does their yoga, then you have to know that about yourself. Knowing your own person is the most important part, in my opinion. Although some small cutesy tips hydrate, keeping hydrated is so important for you. Spleen I think it was Spleen brought up at one point. Anytime I do an online tournament, I crack a window now. Getting fresh air in the room, it's a real thing. I've noticed a performance boost when there is fresh air in the room. It is a really weird thing, but I have noticed it actually have a positive effect on my gameplay. Just little things like that. So learn yourself, I think, is really the most important part, though. So for example, I know I'm a medical disaster, so planning around that stuff and mitigating the variance is more what you have to do, right?
Honestly, that was such. I don't mean to toot your horn, but that is a great answer. That was tenfold more than I expected out of that answer. That was really amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have it's really hard to follow that, but my next question is what do you do the day of the tournament? Before the tournament, let's say. Do you have a routine that you personally do on the day of?
Usually pick my deck. That's a good one.
The day of, okay, all right.
No, I tend to I will get in this state the day of where, and this is my brain processing things, but kind of like what Sean was mentioning earlier, it's not that I'm actually picking my deck the day of, but I will have multiple options going into a tournament, and moment to moment analyzing people are talking about, things like that, knowing these moments, things are coming up, what I'm feeling comfortable playing. For example, talking about that Monarch tournament, I had Dawnwaker as my other deck that I was going to play in that tournament, and I needed knowing that I was struggling medically, I was I need a deck that is going to be a little more straightforward so that I can focus on just executing my game plan, which is why I chose Winota in that tournament. When I had two options that I felt were extremely viable to play in that tournament, I was I'm going to choose Winota because there's a few less options and choices I have to make that are going to make me, someone who is not doing okay right now, have to put in that little extra.
I like that. I really like that. And I think that for a tournament like Punt City, which is entirely playtests, you have that option, I think,
Absolutely.
a lot more easily to just bring a couple decks that you feel good on and then kind of make your choice the day of.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. I like that. I like that a lot. Do you have intangibles that you do? Do you do you want a taco before tournaments, that kind of thing? Are you eating a meal? Are you going in on just caffeine and cigarettes? What's the
I don't drink coffee on the day of tournaments. I am addicted to caffeine as a person, but I don't drink coffee because I have weak stomach. And I know that it will just absolutely destroy me. That's my like particular, but it's not like
That's your big thing.
I wake up and have a burrito at 6 a.m. and listen to the birds in the morning. Like, no, I get there, and as a person, I just sort of get there at the last minute and am doing just my best to be alive. And that's sort of my consistent MO in tournaments as well. I'm not a great example for this because there are people who are like really particular with these things, and I'm a hot mess. Like,
I mean, it's okay to not be neurotic, Ian. Like, it's okay. But for me, I don't grind tournaments. My high stress environment is playing shows, right? So if I'm going to play a concert, the thing that I will always do before the concert is take like a half-hour nap and eat like a meal of a decent size, but like that kind of thing. So those are my preparatory things for high stress environments. But some people just respond better to stress than I would. You don't need to be warm and rested and have a full belly, right? Like, which is, I think there's a lot to be said about success under fire when you're not someone who needs the same thing every time. So it's just one of those things. I'm curious. Shawnee, how do you feel about it? Do you have a routine? You play a lot more tournaments than I do.
We just go with the flow of it.
Okay. Baja Blast.
That's so you.
Baja Blast, 2 cheesy beef burritos, right? Like,
I mean, if that's the flow at the day in the morning, that's the flow. Like, we're just going with the flow of it, but that's nothing serious. I do realize that hydrate, because at that Monarch tournament, I was the guy who was keep going to the water fountain for a cup of water, because man, was I thirsty.
Hydrate or dihydrate.
No, I agree.
Absolutely. Okay, I love that.
Water and snacks, though. Seriously, get like a little bag of nuts.
Water and snacks. Okay.
Yeah,
like a little baggie. Like bring a day pack or whatever.
Yeah.
Snacks. Yeah.
I mean, you already have these giant ass backpacks on you, right? Like no one shows up to a Magic thing with just a deck box, right? They always have these fucking giant nerds. Sorry, I just dropping F-bombs, but
no, it's fine. It's after dark. This is not for kids. It's fine. You're good.
But like everyone's showing up with these huge backpacks full of like Magic stuff and half of the cards they want signed, and there's 17 decks because we all have a problem. And you can shove a bag of peanuts in there, you're gonna be okay.
Well, I went to SCG Syracuse over the past weekend, and the event that it's held in has a clear bag policy where you can only bring in a clear bag with stuff in it. You're not allowed to bring backpacks in.
Wow.
So sometimes maybe you can't bring snacks. Like I brought like a plastic grocery bag with a deck, a playmat, and cards that I wanted to sell.
That's cringe.
It's odd. Yeah, it's pretty weird. But I'm sure that other people just wore bags and didn't care. But as someone who like follows the rules pretty strictly, I guess maybe that's my fault. So I will ask, and this is a hard question to ask, but I'll float it to both of you. Ian first, obviously, because you're the guest. What has your typical tournament experience been like when you play? Or is there one?
I think that is the biggest like misnomer about CEDH performance in the entire, like, it is the most difficult and the most variance filled competitive format that exists in Magic, and I will die on that hill 3000%. You have 4 players showing up, each with 100 card singleton decks, and yes, there might be overlapping archetypes, but you can have archetypes overlapping that have completely different commanders, different meta choices, different people coming from all parts of the world. So the variance that happens is exceedingly insane. Then you're mulliganing to X amount of cards that may or may not be a sculpted hand, depending on how player mulligan experience is. You have to deal with everyone's individual choices, and you have to deal with personality differences at times. I literally have had tournaments where my analysis was extremely on point, but either A, because I was a content creator at the time, or B, because I wasn't a content creator at the time, people have or have not listened to me or treated me as a threat at the table.
Yeah.
There was a tournament I was playing way back in the Flash era where I was on Flash Hulk. I was playing against 2 Najeela Flash decks. And I chain a vapor this person's Najeela, and I say, hey, if you don't sack a land and bounce their Najeela, we are going to lose this game.
Yeah.
And they looked at me and said, I'm Najeela, I need my lands. Which was some of the like first one-dimensional cake thinking. It was rough. And I go, okay, buddy, we're gonna lose. Sorry.
Yeah.
Didn't do it. The person goes, Enlightened Tutor, Nature's Will, wins the game immediately. Immediately. Yeah. And that is just a thing that can happen because every single decision that happens at the table is like this insane butterfly effect in CEDH. And so I am known as a performing player in this format, right? I have consistently put up results.
Yeah.
But there are also multiple tournaments I would talk about where I have missed top 16 by a single match, by a single decision made in a single match.
Yeah.
That's happened. I mean, Sean, you know this as much as what I do, right? Like the single one decision moments where, like, I know for a fact we've jumped into servers that we're both in and just like bitched to people because of one person making one choice that ruined our entire tournament chances. Yep. It's a thing. It's one of the hardest things. I think one of the biggest level up moments for people in CEDH is understanding that part and being able to differentiate between I messed up, I need to improve this part of my game, or accepting that there might have been something that I did wrong, even if it goes all the way back to I kept a shit hand.
Yeah.
Or all the way to I think I played technically the correct hand in this meta. I did my best with my mulligans, and I just got kind of diddled because that guy was stubborn.
Yeah.
And there's that range of insanity in CEDH, and it's one of the hardest things is to be able to pick apart those moments, right? The more you become a learned person, the more you understand that it's differentiating the chaos from the technicality, right?
I think also in that regard there is kind of the opposite of that, where it can be very, very hard to be self-reflective of, did we create any of those moments, and how do we do better? What choices could I have made differently? When someone was trying to politic with me and they were right, how do I take that and change my game and make it better?
Absolutely.
I think that, so I think it's safe to say, in short, that there really isn't a typical CEDH tournament experience. Like, unless you're like, if you're a member of Playing with Power or Spleen Phase, people don't tend to revere you wholesale. You know what I mean? Like, I think like Ryan could go to a tournament and be like, I'm playing Godo. This person's going to win right now if you don't do something. And I think clout gets him there. But
I've had the opposite clout experience. I think it's I've seen it happen more negatively than positively. Like, I watched Spleen get his absolute teeth kicked in a tournament just because people were like, you were on a podcast and they said you were one of the best players of all time. Take 6.
So I was about to ask, like, do you have that same thing happen to you, Ian, where you go into a pod and people already start threat assessing you before you even show your commanders? Because of like the content or the stigma that is on your name kind of has. Like, for me, people like, I go into a pod and people are already like, I am just not going to listen to you. Like, right off the bat.
Yeah.
And I was like, we have never met before. And it's just like,
you just know my voice.
You just know my voice, and you just like hear things, and like you're just going off that. And I was in the same thing. It's like, oh, I respect you as a content creator, so I'm gonna listen to what you're saying as a gospel. And that was like a thing that Spleen and Sick has, where they have people who listen, and there are people like, if you tell me to do this, I'm going to try to do the extreme opposite.
I think parasocial relationships like that are really, really hard to navigate. And it's really, really hard to see how people are going to interpret you. Like, I know in a limited experience, right? I've casted CEDH tournaments. I've been on people's streams and stuff. So I know that people, if I go into a server that I am new into, I have had poor threat assessment against me because people know my voice or whatever.
Right.
And I can only imagine it's tenfold for people like playing with Power or you, Ian, who people, they don't know how to react when it's someone that they recognize. They can't quite put it together.
So it's funny. I think this is like really clearly demonstrated with the MLC. I have a significant portion of people in the comments of the YouTube games that I play who think that me being an emotional person is like a ploy. So I am very, for those who, it's really funny. There's a difference between like content recorded Ian and stream Ian, and you can start to see like how I am in real life when you watch me do like streams and stuff. But like my content's very poised, put together, and things like that. So people assume that like when I complain about something happening in a game, it's not me as a human just being like, can I stop getting diddled? You know what I mean? That's where I feel. But there are people who are like, yes, he has whined at the correct time to make his opponents reorganize their attacks, and it's clearly a tactic. And I'm like, no, I'm a loud theater kid, and I don't like I don't like having my permanents blown up, and I'm trying to win a game. Like,
it's just who you are.
I think we share the same thing too. I'm so emotional when I play a game. When people are like, do something, and I'm like, you don't understand. Like, it's the same. Like, I bitch at Scott all the time when we get in the same pod where Scott can resolve like the biggest thing, and I'm like, dude, I just want a dork. Is that okay? Like, can I have a dork, please?
Okay, so Ashani, the important thing for everyone to know here and for you to know as well is that you just need to be more lovable. Like, that's how you get things through. At any point, you just be more lovable, and it happens. Like, just be known for being lovable. That's the only advice that I can give to anyone. Chat, thank you. Scotty is so nice, though. I appreciate that. It's very kind of you. There's actually a really good question a little bit up the chat that I wanted to point out while we're talking about politicking and threat assessment and that kind of thing. Kahlua asks, how do you deal with the silver siren tongues of people you're playing with? I can't handle the constant politicking. So how do you feel? Number one, I guess I'd say, like, how do you feel about the position of politicking in CEDH and the nature of politicking in CEDH? And number two, how do you deal with it after that? Ashani?
For me, I absolutely love it. That is my one thing that attracts me to CEDH is the mind games and the politics in it.
Yeah.
And what you can get away with and what you can bluff. I think that's the reason I'm not that great at 60 cards. It's just I can't do that there. But if you don't want to be a part of the politics, like there's some people are like, I don't want a politics, let the game flow. Like Mikey's a big proponent for that. Like, I want to keep my information to myself, and I just want the game to play how it's supposed to play. And if you're that person, if someone asks you a question, don't answer them. That is the easiest way for you to not be engaged into that conversation.
Yeah, give them zero information.
Don't give them zero information. Yeah. Like, don't him and haw, don't think about it, don't pause, just like be silent. Or if they ask you again, I'm like, I will tell you nothing, and that's about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone has the opportunity to play against Takano, but if you do, he would be the great example of how not to deal with politics. And his answer is always like, play your spells. Are you putting something on the stack? No, okay, it resolves. Like, just being, it might sound very like aggressive and dickish, but if you don't want to be a part of it, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I like that. So regardless of perception of your activities, like it's a game, and you're just trying to win, and that's the way that you're trying to win.
Yep.
Ian, I think you're also one. Actually, I know you're also one, having played games with you, that likes to politic a little. That likes to kind of. They refer to it in like sports as like the field general, pointing out all the things that are challenges and addressing them. And you are one of the best at that, in my opinion. I've experienced Spleen Face's brand of it, and I've experienced your brand of it, and yours is so much more
Funnel. Yeah.
You're take this in the best way possible. You're the Grima Wormtongue of CEDH, like the kingdom builder and kingdom destroyer of CEDH, just whispering in everyone's ear and telling them what to do.
This is why people think I'm an asshole.
No, I said the best way possible.
Yeah,
specifically, you're so nice about it. But like you have that effect where you'll sway people completely, and it's wild to watch, by the way. But like, and you're I think you're very good at it, and you disarm people who want to not politic. But for the people who actively are playing against you, what's the best way to dissuade you from further politicking with them? Is I guess.
So how to make me shut up?
I mean, if I'm gonna ask a politicker how to make them stop, I'm gonna ask the best one. So.
Oh, okay. No, so this happens to me every once in a while, where like people are convinced. Quick side thing to explain this. I think the reason that like it has that like whispering madness effect is like I legitimately like love this game, and I love like even at a CEDH level, like I would like to leave every single pod friends with the people that I left the game with, right? I legitimately try and have a great social relationship with everyone I play a game with, which is why I like CEDH way more than 60 card, because the amount of times I would just be trying to play the freaking card game and people would just be like rude, they wouldn't shake my hand, they would be salt lords like the whole time. Like you don't get that in CEDH I mean, it's happened, but not even close to the amount I would see it in 60 card. Like these people quietly, miserably shuffling, staring down each other. Like it's not a thing. Yeah. So the quickest way to shut me down as a player, if you don't want to like play the political game, is just be that asshole. If you really don't want to like, if you just like tell me to shut up, then I'm not going to talk to you, right? Like I as a person, I have enough anxiety where if someone aggresses towards me, I'm like, I'm never talking to that person. Like I have no desire.
Let's not have a confrontation. Yeah.
Like I'm good. We don't need to do this. But for example, like we were talking about Takato, and you said he has a dismissive way of going about that. I've had many very good games with Takato, and he is not a politics person, but we were still able to be in a pod where I can be like, I know you don't want politic right now, pointing out that we're going to lose this thing. That's it.
That's it. Exactly.
Yeah. Takato is extremely chill, but his response to probing for information is usually to not give any. And that is like, if you can balance not giving any information, but still being nice, I think that also ups your stakes in when you're playing regularly with people. So
right, and I think I think pointing him out as an example is a really fantastic one, because he's very polite player. I've never had a bad experience with him, but does not engage in that part of the game, and I've never taken offense to it because it's just his thing. Like, but he's so nice. Like we'll still like chat while things are happening. It's just not like when it comes to like the, all right, what are we gonna do about this? He's like, I'm good. I'll resolve it, or I won't. It's up to you. Like
there is no we.
Yeah.
I've heard someone said in a post where comedian LJ and Jamaican in the same pod would grow cancer cells. And I think
you throw Reed in as the fourth there, sick robot. That would just be like,
they're like, and I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't want to be in that pod either. Like that sounds like a pod I would just absolutely not want to be a part of.
Oh my goodness. We're like, all right, it's been 3 hours and we've passed the first turn.
You gotta, well, first you gotta ask what Reed's grilling. If it's hot dogs today. And then you have to tell Spleen he's a robot. Like you gotta start out with that. That was all really great, and I think we kind of hit the point. So I'll ask the next question. If a player is having a problem, whether it be problem with their opponent's deck, a problem with misunderstanding the rules, can you kind of explain the importance of calling a judge? Because people don't in tournaments. Like that's what I've seen. I wanted to talk about it briefly. Then that judges are your friend, and they're there for the players to impact that experience. So have you had any judge calls in tournaments, and how did those resolve? Did you find it to be the case that the judge is just looking out for everyone's best interest?
I am the person who love to call judge. I do it for 60 cards. I do it for everything, because if a lot of people would like to ask, what does your card do? And I'm like, I'm not reading it to you, and I'll call judge. Or just for very petty reasons. Well, that's just me, because of my game about it. But no, if you don't understand the card, if you even think there's something, a slight misunderstanding, just call a judge. It's the safest thing you can do, especially in tournament play. If someone is trying to explain a ruling of a card to you, call a judge.
Yeah. Red flag.
Yeah, like if someone is trying to tell you how this card works, no. Don't even if it's make the game go faster, no. Call a judge. Always call a judge, no matter how simple or even idiotic it seems. Just to make sure you're making the correct play action.
Excellent. I love that.
Yeah, and it's so with judges, I think like a lot of language is really important. So like the judges know the language of the game, and sometimes we will be very casual with the way we talk about things, and this is just something that comes with like more time playing the game, right? But like knowing that you have like rights as a player, like taking back your land drop where there was no priority passed, that is a thing, that is a valid Magic play, and you have the right to do that at any time, despite someone being like, "This is comp REL." You're like,
it doesn't
and
use
it's in the comp
stack.
rules.
So yeah.
Or knowing that you go, all right, move to combat, and then you're like, oh wait a minute, and someone's like, you said, and you're like, you didn't say pass priority, chill, like, you know what I mean, like stuff like that, like knowing the basics of what you can and can't do in the game help a lot. But judges are there to sometimes people, I think especially with CEDH, like people are afraid that they're going to be the narc, right? Like if you call the judge, you're like, oh, this is the judge caller at the table. Like no, just be like, hey, I really want this to, just because this is a tournament, everybody, I really want us to all be on the same page. Like I'm just going to call a judge so we can clarify this, because we can't go through these shortcuts. And also like it stinks, but there are people who will make multiple mistakes on a GRV level. And if you don't bring it up to a judge, you can end up in situations where I've had this happen before, where they make one really big mistake and it king makes a player.
Yeah.
And because you didn't point out the smaller mistakes going into that moment, and I'm not talking about like silly things like they just go, oh wait, I gotta go do this. Like I'm talking about things where they draw two cards and then like put one back like 6 times, and in a place where it's like can be sketchy, or like, and by the time they like resolve one thing, or they like mess up priority really badly and like cause someone to win the game because they do that. And if that happens a bunch of little times, it can easily throw a game over the course of the game. And I'm not saying to like narc down on people, like
for sure.
It's a complicated game enough without having to be perfect in all of our, like no one wants to pass through every single step and phase, like that kill me. But like if it is a frequent enough thing where it is going to affect the outcome of the game, the judges are there to make sure that at the end of the day everyone is having the best experience. And that is, they are there to make sure that the tournament is being run right. And there are many times in which they are allies for you, and you should use them.
Excellent. Ian, we have about 5 minutes until we have to take our break. So I wanted to just lightning round you real quick.
Hit me.
Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
What's your favorite deck in any format?
Any format?
Any format.
Probably still Dominic or Thrasios. It's my baby.
Okay. Yeah. What is one quick area you think the CEDH community could improve in?
They have made so many good strides, but reactions, y'all need to be nicer to people. Stop engaging with all of the things like this definitive 60 card list like it was a real thing, and stop telling people their opinion on Hull Breacher is a reason for them to go kill themselves. Like, it's too much. People need to relax.
Yep.
Excellent. I think this answer is like fairly obvious, but how do you feel about the rise of tournament EDH?
Big fan of it. Obviously, it's being done right, which is something that scared me for a little while. But I really think this can be a format that still promotes the idea that we are playing a social format on a competitive scale, that's awesome. Yeah.
Another thing, what is the sexiest soup? You weren't ready for it.
I wasn't. I was for what is the sexiest? I was like, I'm so ready. And then you said soup.
Soup.
I am always so happy to have a bowl of clam chowder that it is almost an erotic fixation at this point. So,
all right. Last question in the lightning round is: do you have any new projects coming up, and where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah. So I so many ideas going through my head at all times, but youtube.com/ComedIanMTG is where you can find all things CEDH. This most recent video, the CEDH tournaments and how to win them, was such a positive thing for me because it's exactly the type of video I wanted to see as someone going into tournaments, and it felt really good to actualize what I've been trying to do with my content for a really long time in such a clear and concise way. So I'm continually trying to evolve my content. I'm trying new stuff out all the time, and occasionally I'll go back to stuff that I really enjoy doing, but I'm always trying to push new stuff out there so that people who are really interested in CEDH, not just at a tournament level, but just in a way where you want to either make a fun brew, or you want to compete, or you want to hear about the cool stuff that is being played at a tournament level, that's the stuff that's available. And on a completely unrelated note, I've been collaborating a lot with people in the Magic space, not in the CEDH space. So, for example, I just found out that I live disturbingly close to Veggie Wagon, who is a fantastic MTG creator, and we are. So I talked a little bit earlier about my difference between my video personality and my stream personality.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to put a little more comedian in ComedIanMTG as we move forward. So
love that.
Awesome.
Love that. All right. Well, thank you so much for the interview. Thank you so much for hanging out and being a wonderful guest on the show. Your input was incredible. Loved having you. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and do some stuff. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see where the night takes us. But thank you everyone for watching. This is Eminence MTG, Eminence TV Live. Scoots, Jamaican dude, comedian. We'll see you in a bit.